Warning. This show features dark subjects which may be triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Chaos Jar. I'm your announcer, J Wes Secord, the loud and obnoxious one. Hey. Over here, we've got our host and big bag of facts, Bad Ben.
Hey.
And as always, we have our good friend, AT Token.
Yep.
And before we start the show, I just wanted to remind you to like, subscribe, rate and review, do a backflip, pick some cherries, all that stuff.
Send us
some cherries. Pick some apples, because we'll have them in 2 years.
GMOs. You can also find us. You can also look at shit that we made on Instagram and Twitter at BA Chaos Jar. I keep wanting to say underscore, but that's my thing. Yeah. And you could possibly even text me, message me a question that I will answer back to you on Twitter at I'm glad you asked underscore. Underscores and ellipses. You can also find us on Facebook at Pandora's Jar Podcast. We are
5 months away?
5 months away from being able to change that. Woo! And lastly...
Mini entrance.
And lastly, if you want to be a patron, go to patreon.com/chaosjar and support us. You'll get early access to some of our bonus episodes. Plus, you'll get to watch the bonus episodes that have gone out into the world to fly free like little birdie babies. And we're also on YouTube now. So if, go check us out on YouTube. Unless you're watching this on YouTube, in which case, thank you. We love you. You're great.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. All these will be down in the show notes, so check those out when you're finished the video, or even before the video. You know what? Actually, no, just finish the video first. Please enjoy us. Now, Ben, what's going into the jar today, Mr. Cofferhand?
So, we are going to talk about, actually, 3 wrestling murders.
So...
Separate?
So wrestling is real?
No. Yes, totally. So, I'm just going to say it, we originally had a guest planned for this, but they backed out. So, I just decided to throw it all together and do it anyways.
Wow.
It's like some people's relationships.
Wow.
Well, you know what? All you can do is nick that one in the butt.
Ha!
Finger first. Politeness.
It's called consent, which is politeness in itself, and wrestling!
Back to that. So, let's talk about wrestling to begin with, though. So, professional wrestling is an athletic performance that tries to exhibit itself as a prize fight. So, they're trying to fight over... Originally, it was just over belts, like actual championship belts, but now it's become,
entertainment,
bragging rights, whatever else. Yeah, it's become very melodramatic over the years.
Yeah, I've had it described to me before as I'm chewing popcorn while talking, but I had it described to me as kind of closer to something like Game of Thrones and whatnot, as in terms of storyline, and it's become a lot more. Like the male soap opera.
Yeah. This is essentially what a lot of people have gone with, is that it's a lot like a sports soap opera instead of anything else. Because some females do watch the show and enjoy it.
Yeah. That was just the basic thing I heard originally. Clearly, I'm not one to really focus on the gender component of what I say.
Yes, that's very true.
You're out of this conversation.
So, it receives its kind of origins with the style that was developed. It was called Greco-Roman. Originally, a lot of it was like the Olympic wrestling that you see was mostly just grapples and so on. But then
with lots of nudity.
Yeah,
and still with it.
But this became a lot more like a showman style. So there was a lot more hype behind the person while the athletic was still happening. And it actually really started off that way in like the 1830s. The style was developed to become known as Greco-Roman or French wrestling or classic wrestling. And in 1898, Paul Pons, also known as Le Colosse or the Colossus, became the first Greco-Roman world champion. So he...
Wait.
King of the Naked Dudes.
He's the Colossus, but in France he's less Colossus?
No, Le Colosse.
You might be thinking Wes Colossus, like you.
No, that's not quite right. So,
right.
Le Colosse.
Le Colosse.
Okay, la. Like the music note.
We're gonna run out of this.
5 hours later.
So back to how this works.
Oh, okay. I get it. La means the in French.
Let's modify.
Now we have to figure out what Colossus means in French.
Big fucking thing.
So, obviously he was a Frenchman that won the championship, and then he eventually did lose off with it, and he actually died pretty young. So
Really?
that's going to be a theme throughout this entire thing.
Was he a big person?
Okay.
Wasn't the average lifespan then half of what it is now, though?
Well, no, I think there were still people living into their 60s and 70s, but...
Yeah, as an oddity, not a norm.
Yeah, I guess. A lot of sports also came with early deaths. There's a boxing match that happened between... Oh, I forget their names. It was 2 men, and they fought literally for 7 hours or something like that.
And then they both killed themselves.
No, they were fine.
Oh, fine, okay.
One survived to be in his 50s, but the other one died the next year after this fight.
Oh, wow.
In another fight.
Okay.
But yeah. So the popularity of this kind of grew, and it kind of went into sideshows, and it focused more on the showmanship than the athletics. And I guess at some point somebody figured out, hey, if we choreograph this and do the same show in each different town, it looks good, and we save our bodies. So we don't have to be beat up, we're not always getting injured, and we can still make a really great show and be fine at the end of the night.
And is that basically the invention of pro wrestling?
Well, that's just how pro wrestling came to be evolved.
Yeah.
So it grew through the UK and the US as well. Became with the choreography as a fixture of the actual wrestling.
Choreography?
Choreography.
He's back.
He's got this little
I got
full of popcorn on his spear.
There will be more.
So I could keep going on with how each continent and each country developed it, but for the sake of the show, we're going to focus more on the United States and North American version. And I'm going to stay away from Mexico a little bit because they have a very different tradition in lucha libre on how it works.
I think they have the coolest of the wrestling styles.
They have a very interesting culture, that's for sure, and a lot of the athletics that go with it. Japan has a very strong style as well, and
yeah, it's Japan.
Yeah, and it's actually called strong style. A lot of people call it strong style wrestling, and they're very stiff. And any gaijin that come in, they actually will stiff them because they don't want to lose. So in order to prove that you're willing to, that you are able to do it, if you put up an actual couple stiff shots and take a couple beatings and then dish it back, they kind of garner a respect for you, and it keeps going back and forth.
That happened to you, didn't it?
Yeah. So
Japan is so anime.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
But yeah,
because that's where it originated from.
Anime originated in Japan. Just because you were no.
Yeah, that's what I was confused about. I had a mouthful of food, so I'm glad you said it.
Bad timing.
Those in the wrestling industry in the early years developed their own language and signs and sets to keep the show flowing smoothly. So if something happened, you would use a certain hand signal or a squeeze or something to move. Yes, I know. To move
sometimes
between. So and they would use outside of the ring or even in the ring and stuff, there would be a lot of like side talk that would happen, and it wouldn't make any sense to a layman because they're not in the industry, but it was a way to keep people knowing what's going on.
Now, I have to imagine that the squeezes.
I don't think you get caught up on that one.
You start with one, you work your way to the other, and then you do both.
Oh, not that way. I'm glad you went with that joke because it was needed. But
That's how you
I imagine, because it's in Japan, that they squeeze in kanji. So like they, so each squeeze is a different bar of the kanji. And so they do. So like one character is like a whole word. So
all these signals take place in all different countries and in North America. And I'll go with this whole squeeze thing and why I said squeezing. If you have somebody, in some
because of
sort
all the gay porn.
Yeah, totally.
Is there a lot?
But if you have somebody in a certain hold, instead of like calling up to them to be like, I'm going to reverse the hold or you reverse the hold, you'll like squeeze their arm and that'll tell them to take the office, which is a term that they use to like, you take control of here or you reverse out.
It's like another signal for tapping out, just there's variants for different things.
Yeah, but with this, like with the squeezing of the arm, it actually makes it so that the other person knows, okay, I can now proceed with my next, what I'm going to do. I'm now going to take control of this or I'm going to get out of this.
The next step of the dance.
Yeah. Same thing with like when you watch...
the promotion.
Yeah. Same thing with when you watch like on like TV, you'll watch them like tap the back of somebody before they drop them for a DDT. That's just the signal that I'm going to drop now so that you know what's happening. It's all based on small signals to not have a lot of verbalization happening because nothing would be worse than watching a couple people talk in the middle of this.
I think, by the way, we want video for this.
Though, I'll say this. I've seen a few wrestling shows. I think my favorite... I love actually seeing those little details where it breaks sort of thing. So I love when they're in that, like, arm lock and they're like, yeah, how's it going? Yeah, having a good day. His wife and kids good? Yeah, okay. Like, I just assume that's what they're talking about.
I think one of my absolute favorite of like a slip like that comes from Tommy Dreamer and there's two other wrestlers involved in the match, but it was a triple threat match for the ECW title, and he clearly on camera, the camera was close enough to catch him and be like, you do this and I'm gonna go do this, and you hear him like reciting it off very quickly.
It's like high school schemers.
Actually, Stone Cold Steve Austin was deaf in 1 year, so whenever they spoke to him in the ring, he had to be on the other side. So he said that a bunch of times in the middle of a match, it would just get a little disorienting, so they'd have to just go with the flow because he's just deaf in that 1 year, and the guy kept trying to talk to him in that ear.
Wouldn't that make for a better show, though?
It does. But it also makes it a little more chaotic because now you don't know what the other guy's doing.
Yeah, you need to be a proper professional.
It's more dangerous for the stage combat that's kind of sort of choreographed.
Yeah.
But I'll say this though, it would benefit to be a ventriloquist.
Yeah, it really would.
Hey, I know what to do right now. Oh, let's go.
I don't think they can smuggle that much lube on the stage.
What?
Human
It's not about the ant.
I think you missed where I was going, but okay, I like it.
What a finishing move that would be.
The puppet slammed!
Waddling out of the ring. Gingerly.
So,
I was going to make a joke about how, like, the ventriloquist guy tells him his whole plan without anybody seeing his mouth move, and then go, dude, why do you always have to do it in a Mickey Mouse voice?
So creepy.
Well, like the Undertaker, he makes this shh sound all the time in the middle of his matches, and so when he's making that sound, he's actually like reciting out things like, suplex and things like that.
So this is like verbal reminder.
Yeah, but it's to control it. But because he's making that sound, it just makes it sound like he's putting a lot of intensity into the move he's doing at the moment. So I know it sounded a little off.
No one will ever notice. Suplex. Now do spar dive.
So,
the pig Latin of communication.
Yeah.
anyways, these carnival workers and the industry itself developed this term called kayfabe.
Wait, they were straight up carnies at the beginning?
Some of them were.
Yeah. Honestly, that part is the only thing that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, like, even in the industry, they call anybody who, like a fan, fans are known as marks, which is just like a carnival mark, because that's who you're selling to.
Yeah.
And then, for instance, somebody who's smart to the business is called a smart mark. So,
A smart.
yeah, sometimes that's actually a term that's used.
Oh, yes. I love portmanteaus.
So,
Is it portmanteau or portmanteau? I always keep fucking it up.
I think it's portmanteau. That sounds allowed.
Okay. Portmanteau.
Like
If we're wrong, send him a thing on Twitter.
Like everything linguistic, the more people who do it wrong, the more likely it will become reality. So.
Yeah, but I don't want to be the one who started the trend of wrong speak.
Yeah.
I'm already pissed off by weird slang we have today. Did you know that? You know what? I'll save it for the overflow. Keep going.
All right. So, kayfabe was brought into in circle maintaining the suspension of disbelief, and promote everything as real or true. So everything had to be, this is real, to try and keep it that way. So, kayfabe has evolved over the years in its meaning and progressed, but
is it effectively like a code of professional acting?
Yeah, and like I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible because it does get a little bit different, and it's really incredibly pushed on talent to be like super crucial in how the business survives. And so in it, you establish that good guys, like the good wrestlers, are known as baby faces or faces, and the villainous wrestlers are known as heels. And so that's a term that's used all the time, like face heel, and like when you watch on dirt sheets or whatever, if a good guy goes bad, it's called a heel turn or a face turn. So
now, I've always wondered why a heel. Like I understand face, but what is it about a heel?
You turn on your heel.
Yeah.
Oh,
pivot.
I see.
So kayfabe was so crucially maintained even into the 80s that so basically. The
kayfabe survived Coke?
Oh, yeah.
Holy shit.
So faces wouldn't,
business.
like, associate with heels. Like, they would actually, like, they try to keep you separated.
Mm-hmm.
And it got so far that actually the Iron Sheik and Jim Duggan were involved in a, like, feud at one point. And when they were involved in this feud for the WWF Championship at the time, they weren't supposed to associate with each other because Jim Duggan's the face and Iron Sheik's the heel, and they're enemies.
They can't be seen having hot dogs after.
Well, they got busted on the road with Coke in the car, and this, of course, went huge and got them both fired from the company.
Of course, I hit the nail on the head.
So,
plus they were gay lovers.
Oh God!
I mean, enough Coke. A hole's a hole.
So after a bit of time, it actually kind of slowly. People started becoming like, oh, this might be scripted, this might be fake, so on like that.
How long did it take?
So it was in the 90s during the trial that he pushed it out there as that Vince McMahon actually openly stated that it's not an athletic performance to try and get rid of this whole steroid scandal thing.
Mm.
And he put it out there that it's sports entertainment, and that is really disturbing.
Yeah. Honestly,
that.
he just screwed over the legitimacy of wrestling.
Yeah, well,
that's disturbing.
Is it the only sport where amateur and pro are like conventionally swapped?
I guess in a way, yeah, because
amateur wrestling is the Olympic style, or what you would do in the Olympics.
Yeah, and it's also known as Olympic wrestling.
Okay,
but yeah, so like
or wrestling if you watch South Park.
But yeah, so the evolution of God,
you just remember that episode.
It's funny because Ted Turner, when he bought Georgia Championship Wrestling and Jim Crockett Promotions and stuff like that, and turned it into WCW, so World Championship Wrestling. He called Vince McMahon and told him I entered the wrestling company, and Vince McMahon's response was, "Okay, well, tell me when you entered the wrestling company." But yeah, so As time went on in America, the popularity of wrestling waned around World War I, obviously, because you're not going to have soldiers around to watch the shows.
Also, everyone wanted to fight.
Yeah, and it had a small resurgence in the 20s up into the Depression and World War II because obviously fell on hard times, all that kind of stuff. But during the 20s, there was this huge boom in progression of the economy, so everybody has all this extra income.
Neat tidbit. Hitler hated popcorn.
Wow.
Hitting Godwin's law for no reason. Just
now that we've established now that we've hit Godwin's law, we're no longer relevant. So,
thanks, asshole.
After World War II, the industry bounced back in a huge way, and by 1948, a loose confederation of promotions, so a lot of little promotions, formed together to make the National Wrestling Alliance.
Hey, first guild.
Yeah, so NWA, that's what. Over the next few years, members of the NWA chose Lou Thesz to unify the various top-tier titles into one world championship. And then that world champion would go around between the promotions and wrestle in there. But a lot of these promotions weren't so keen on losing face. So they would actually, when Thesz would come, instead of setting it up that, okay, well, my guy will lose to your champion to unify that title, they tried to make it into shoot matches, which is a legitimate fight. So they would put their champion in there, and Thesz is thinking about coming in, and this is going to be a pro show, and then all of a sudden they're just kicking the shit out of him. So
were people betting on this? Is that why they did that?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's just that they didn't want to lose face. They wanted their champion that's popular in their community to be the champion. So
now, every time you said Thesz, I thought of the hat.
I was going to say Beth.
What?
Yeah, because Beth rhymes with Thesz. You know, I've never thought of it that way.
I wasn't going for rhyming, but okay.
I think of Beth Thesz. Not the hat of Fez.
Has there ever been a wrestler with a fez? Because that would be amazing.
Yeah, he's a really old Shriner and he comes out in his car.
Never loses.
He doesn't have a stair. He doesn't have stairs. He has a ramp.
He opens the match by hitting them with his car.
Ow, my shin!
they all of a sudden he opens the trunk and they fall in. It's like, what the hell? Their butt's just stuck there and he's driving around with this wrestler's butt stuck in his Shriner car.
Oh, he's just dragging him around the ring.
and then he ducks and goes under the ropes, so the ropes pull the wrestler. I want to see the Shriner.
Yep.
I want this wrestler. It could be a little person, it could be a regular sized person. I don't give a shit. I just want someone in that tiny car.
No Colossi.
Beating no. Little Colossi, because you know
not
that's
just a regular person.
Wow, man! Don't be racist. Anyway,
okay, that was legitimately brilliant. Respect. Not technically a race, but
props. I feel like that went a whole other way.
Oh, it finally happened.
We're gonna have some little person write in and be like, "We are not a race."
It was covered. Relax.
God, what was it like CinemaSins where they're always like, "That's racist," even when it's not racist.
Oh. So, anyways, Shriner aside,
I mean, you can never push the Shriner aside.
Tell him.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. I was just working on where I wanted to go.
So, Thesz ended up winning most of these shoot fights anyways, because he was a pretty badass guy anyways, and he legitimately had a fighting career before this, so basically putting
a real career?
So basically putting these guys in with this guy and then being like, just fight him for real. Like, that's not a brilliant idea.
dude, that isn't what you said you were gonna do.
Yeah.
It's like the equivalent of one of your
It's supposed to be choreographed. I didn't anticipate. I didn't know that was part of it.
Choreograph this! We can! It just has to be done before the show!
I want to see one of his 6-second matches.
Yeah.
Just a confused opponent.
So television would push the industry even further into mainstream, and the NWA would grow to be the dominant body of the wrestling industry by about the 1950s.
Was it legitimately international by then?
It wasn't really international. It was just slowly growing out into international. Like, for instance, Stampede Wrestling, which was run by Stu Hart, actually kind of got absorbed into the territory in like the 60s and 70s a little bit.
So primarily American so far?
So far, yeah.
Okay.
However, some of the promotions viewed the Alliance as a tyrant and was holding back the industry instead of progressing it, mostly because they would rely on Thesz as being the champion, like he was undefeated.
And, if someone else became the champion, he would just beat the shit out of them.
Probably.
Literally.
Just kick the shit out of them. So,
in or out of them.
some of these promotions would actually splinter off and basically be in a situation of sink or swim on their own. Two of the biggest names to break off.
They wrestled in pools.
That's a different show. Sometimes there's mud.
So he's watching the gay porn.
Wow.
Who said it was men? Human.
So,
Part of this planet.
I mean, I always wonder what the physics of Jello in space is.
now I can picture is two people wrestling in Jello in space.
Right? You want to see it.
It would probably be, the funny part is, and this is where the logic comes in, it'd probably be dangerous because the lack of gravity, you wouldn't be able to find the surface.
It's one hit and you're done.
Yeah.
Well, he's entered the atmosphere. I guess he lost.
Oh, there isn't even a spaceship. He's just in the
They've just been shot into space.
They had to hold their breath that long. And no one's coming to get the winner.
It's a fight for honor and nothing else.
Oh my god! I love that we haven't even gotten into the crime yet. We're doing
horrible history.
Oh my god! So, two of the names to break off were the American Wrestling Alliance, or the AWA, which was founded by Vern Gagne and Wally Carbo. And I'm going to tell you a really great story about Vern Gagne. He actually was like a real wrestler beforehand, and has legitimately killed another man with a wrestling hold.
And in the sport, or just at the bar?
While he was in a nursing home.
That went sideways for you.
So,
a really good show.
Apparently he was there and just got into a fight with one of the other people in the nursing home, and I'm not even sure if this was like a fight or if he just all of a sudden grappled another guy.
I'm done with you talking.
But he was like demented. He had dementia. He had Alzheimer's really, really badly in the end of his life, and just suddenly grabbed this guy and choked him right out like it was over.
How's that not murder?
Because he's got dementia.
So he didn't know what was happening. If anything, wouldn't it be manslaughter then?
Yeah,
because it wasn't intended.
He was already like 83. What are you gonna do?
He choked out a dude at 83.
Oh yeah, that's how badass this guy was.
It's also the reason none of the orderlies came and stopped it is because they got really excited about seeing the wrestling and shit. And it's like, when the one guy came in, 1, 2, 3, ding, ding, he did it!
I thought he was like visiting his mom and someone was and like, no.
I thought he was going to choke out his mom. You didn't love me! I've become a monster because of you!
Oh, gosh. So,
I think we've established there's no God.
Yeah. So the AWA is actually who trained a lot of like really big legends as well. They trained like Ric Flair and like
woo.
Yeah. They also trained Buck Zumhoff, who was a terrible person on his own.
Wait. Why was that okay?
Yeah.
I've never seen you guys say it's okay when I woo. You guys really, really pointed that out. Why is that?
That's his catchphrase.
It's Ric Flair's catchphrase.
Woo!
I don't know.
He's
It
like
sounds
the
like air escaping from fat.
Yeah.
I think it's Futurama.
Woo!
Bender's human form.
Well, what's beautiful is with like wrestling training too. Ric Flair actually wrote it in his book on how he did his training, and basically they would
Every 5 minutes, the word woo.
yeah.
That's how he got his breathing.
So they would take him to this farmhouse, like this barn in the middle of nowhere, and make them run like 15 miles every day in the freezing cold, and then like just work them halfway to death and train them on how to actually fight, like how to actually wrestle. And then right before the match, that's when they would let you in because they wanted to see if you would make it all the way there and then protect the secret. But that's when they would let you in that this is all a work.
Wouldn't that really piss some people off?
That's what I like, because Ric Flair actually said, like, literally 5 minutes before his first match, that's when somebody walked up and was like, so this guy's going over, this is how you do it, put together the spots, and then he was like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, it's all work, man.
Wow.
You son of a bitch.
I assumed it was job because he was getting paid,
Some people get paid to do violence.
but So did I miss the word work earlier, by the way?
So
Like,
work-
I already figured out what it was, but
Yeah.
like, my joke aside, I'm
Belch
burping
3.
tonight. Belch. But I feel like I didn't hear actually the word work. So
Work means that it's actually just like, so worked, gimmicked, things like that, it means that it's actually like not legitimate.
That's the show.
Yeah, it's part of the show. So Gagne, when he broke away from the NWA, Gagne only broke away from it because he was lobbying to get support to render himself champion. So have him be the NWA champion instead of Luthez. And when they denied it, Gagne just went fine and then walked out and formed his American Wrestling Association. And he became the champion and promoted a very bitter rivalry with a lot of really well-known heels, including Nick Bockwinkel, who's like a legendary person. And I know that name gets me every time.
Just the Winkle.
Because all you think about is the moose.
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly, when you said Bockwinkel,
Yeah.
all I could think of, it was a weird
chicken?
combination of Rocky and Bullwinkle's names together.
He's a flying squirrel moose.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to.
He's a flying squoose.
So the other company to break off.
Hi,
was-
everybody. I'm a squoose.
How am I the only
And
one?
now
who
something
drinks?
you'll really enjoy.
Where's your god now?
Honestly, it has been so long since I heard that. It is just... Oh my god, that is throwing me off, actually.
Oh man.
This is a really good comedy episode.
Yeah, this is great. We're laughing so hard. So the other company that broke off was Capital Wrestling Corporation, which is a promotion coming out of New York.
Yeah, but they're all about the money.
So the history of the CWC is really long. It started originally with Jess McMahon, who was a successful boxing promoter and began working with Tex Rickard, who was promoting boxing in the 3rd Madison Square Garden. So there used to be several of them in different incarnations. Eventually, it amalgamated into Rising Professional Wrestling Promotion. So, like, professional wrestling came into the area and was, like, starting to realize that instead of having these guys box, we could just have them wrestle and make it into more of a show.
Right.
So, eventually, Capital Wrestling Corporation was founded, and it's uncertain by who. Some people believe that it was Jess McMahon who formed this, or if it was actually his son, Vincent J. McMahon.
I was just about to ask if he was related to Vince.
Well, that's not Vince.
What?
So McMahon found that Thesz was not popular in his area and decided to leave the NWA and due to the rigidity on keeping Thesz. So again, this is a champion dispute. Vern Gagne wanted himself to be champion. This is more about he's not popular in our area, so make my guy champion for a little bit so that we can kind of split the profits, and they refused. Eventually, the CWC would become the Worldwide Wrestling Federation before shortening to World Wrestling Federation.
And thus the existence of the WWF.
Yep. So
how'd they get the panda mascot?
That's a different title. We're going to talk about that. So the U.S. was divided up into like territories by the NWA, with the champion traveling through each different territory. So like he would come in and challenge their top guy, and then move on to a new territory. In 1971, the WWF, World Wrestling Federation, suffered a really bad blow and was left without their top draw, Bruno Sammartino, and this whole thing, he was their champion at the time, so he just left with the belt. And basically left them without their popular guy.
And there's no trophy.
Oh, I thought you were... I thought he was just an asshole, and he was just like, yoink, and he just walked away.
It forced them to rejoin the NWA. And then...
Did that just get you now?
No, I heard it originally, and I was like, I was trying to think of a belt joke, but I was like, forget it.
And then you just let your chuckle come out after.
I was actually going to be like, enforcing them to join the NWA so they could hold up their pants, but... So they recovered when Andre the Giant joined the company in 1973.
Yeah!
Andre was actually touring the territories and even was used in the AWA, but remained their largest draw and eventually just kind of signed in with them for good.
Literally.
Largest draw. You know, I heard a hilarious little story about how Andre the Giant, because he was in The Princess Bride, during one of the scenes, he let out a fart that lasted like 15 seconds. And everyone fell silent, and the director said, Andre, are you okay? And he says, now Andre the boss!
No, that's not what he said.
What did he say?
His response was, I am now boss. Because he called everybody boss.
Oh, honestly, I misread it, and I thought he was saying, now I'm the boss.
Isn't that amazing that he asserted his dominance?
That's what I thought it was!
I mean, if anyone doesn't need to assert his dominance.
I'll give you a really good Andre the Giant story. This is going to be a great episode of wrestling stories, because I know so many of them. But Andre the Giant used to do this thing, so he used to love beers. So he used to get this thing where he could chug beers back. So he would say that he could chug his 5 beers before you could finish 5 shots. And the only rule is that you're not allowed to touch his glasses and he's not allowed to touch yours. So the guy would take it and be like, sure, let's do this or whatever. And then he would chug the beer and then put his glass over the last shot. And then just take his time finishing those beers. And then the bet was always that you had to pay for the rest of his drinks for the night, and he could drink kegs.
Infamously drank like over 100 beers.
Yeah,
and they couldn't lift him. So I remember a story being they covered him in a piano cover.
Yeah,
and just left him there for the night.
Well, it's just like when he would stay at hotels, he would have to like poop in the bathtub because the toilets were too small.
For those who don't know, we don't truly understand how anesthetic works. And we're trying to figure out how to dose him. They were trying to gauge, like, okay, how much do you drink to get drunk? He's like, 6. And they're like, okay, so 6 shots of vodka? And like, no, 6 bottles. And so they basically had to talk him through the anesthetic to get him down. It's unbelievable.
Though, I have to say, the rule was that you just couldn't touch the other person's glass, right?
Yeah.
Why not smash the table?
Why not just slide it and let the beer fall over? Because you wouldn't touch it.
If it's on a wooden table, like, you can't touch the glass whatsoever.
Yeah, you can't touch the glass, so you can't touch the bottle, but he put it on top of the shot.
No, it's not a bottle. It's a glass of beer. Like, it's a glass, like a pint glass.
It would shatter him, though.
Oh, well, still.
Also, drinking people are infamously not the most.
But it's actually like, it's a glass. Like, you would drink a glass.
No, I got that.
And it's over your shot. But yeah.
He put it upside down over the shot. Oh.
So that it's covering yours, and then he'll just drink the rest of the thing, and then you can't get to that last shot until he's finished all his beers, and then there you go. Might as well drink up because it's gonna hurt. But so anyways, the NWA bursted through another milestone when the promotion actually got like a nationally broadcasted wrestling program in 1979 called Georgia Championship Wrestling. The WWF then split from the NWA again, began signing on competitors of top talents that they could. So they literally had scouts in other NWA promotions and then would go up to them and be like, come work for us. And basically steal their top talents.
Those dicks.
I know. And that entered the 1980s wrestling boom. And that's when WWF became nationally syndicated. They became basically the monopoly of the industry. By this point, it was under the direction of Vincent Kennedy McMahon, which is our current Vince McMahon.
I thought you were going to say president.
And
the way they're going.
He had really large ambitions that he brought into fruition, like with WrestleMania, which was the first ever like pay-per-view wrestling that was so large scale and brought in celebrities and stuff like that, and he spent a ton of money. He actually borrowed so much money to get WrestleMania off the ground, and they literally thought that he would never make the money back with this, that he was just putting himself into debt, and he made all the money back and then some.
Yeah, well...
So why did they invest?
It was through loans, like loan sharks.
Oh, they were expecting
that, Yeah.
And he basically began that sports entertainment style that came from it, that focused more on the melodrama rather than the, actual athletic thing.
Which helped get around when performers started using drugs or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
The NWA began to dry up, and the territory system that had been working for so long began to die off as the WWF signed on huge stars like Hulk Hogan, Iron Sheik. Just basically, they would start taking stars from left, right, and center. And if you were popular enough, they would come and get you and take you on. So they centered on Jim Crockett Promotions. The NWA survived a little bit longer on the curtails of this promotion because of the time slot they had on TBS. So the Turner Broadcasting.
Yep.
And so, however, it also floundered, and then they were bought out by Ted Turner, who turned the promotion into World Championship Wrestling.
Is that the kid from Fairly Odd Parents?
Yeah, totally.
You were so quick.
We've got.
How do you think he got the money? So,
and the evil?
let's start right into the really well-known part of this whole thing, which is the Monday Night Wars, which was WWF's Raw versus WCW's Nitro, and it was like a rating war. The two promotions were locked in this really heated bid to get as many ratings as possible.
I'm not gonna lie, it sounded like you said promotions.
Yeah, promotions. They would both sign talent off each other, so basically WCW was doing the same thing WWF had originally done.
Were people
steal
double
this
booking?
talent. No.
Okay.
They were signed to exclusive contracts, but for instance, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash at one point, their contracts expired with WWF, and they were leaving the promotion. And then literally the night after that, they ended up showing up on WCW programming. The most infamous thing is that because Raw was taped ahead of time, Lex Luger at one point showed up on both promotions in the same night.
Because Superman was there.
Yes. He was that fast. But, so WCW would give away spoilers from the tape sessions because they taped Raw ahead of time. They'd have somebody there to be like, oh, this and this and this happened, that happened. And it actually backfired on them at one point when Mick Foley won the WWF Championship. And everybody, they announced it on Nitro, and everybody waited till the main event of WWF just to switch the channel, and literally you watch WCW's ratings go whoosh in that last little bit when he faced off against The Rock. So... There's also, like, during this whole heated thing, there's also a small promotion known as Eastern Championship Wrestling that broke off from the NWA and renamed itself Extreme Championship Wrestling under the direction of Paul Heyman. The focus fell more on hardcore wrestling. It became kind of like a cult classic. It wasn't advertiser friendly, so they couldn't get the advertisers at WCW and like the rest of them were. They couldn't even really get a TV show for a very long time. But it had such a huge cult following that it kept them alive for quite a while. But they declared bankruptcy in April of 2001 and were bought off by WWF. WCW fell apart in the end, and they were purchased off as well in 2001. And in 2002, due to a lawsuit with the World Wildlife Foundation, so the panda, the WWF renamed itself World Wrestling Entertainment and became WWE, and were basically monopolized the industry. But they now have like small competitors, but they're still basically the forefront.
Yeah, and I assume their competitors are also like overseas and shit.
No, like some of them are like NGPW, like New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah,
kind of is. But they actually have American counterparts. Actually, Anthem here in Canada owns Impact Wrestling, which was TNA for a while, like Total Nonstop Wrestling.
Here in Canada, USA.
Yeah. In Total Nonstop Action. And then like ROH has grown really, really large, which is Ring of Honor. But they're still not as large as WWE is. The closest competitor they possibly have at the moment, which is not a fair comparison, is All Elite Wrestling, because they're backed by the owners of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Khan family, they're billionaires. They easily could rival Vince's money kind of thing. So
are the Sounds involved in any of this somewhere? They got money to throw, huh?
In all fairness, it's hard to beat an industry that bought several other aspects of the industry.
Yeah.
It's like trying to be a new like cartoon franchise and thinking that somehow you're going to beat Disney when Disney's already bought all the most popular franchises over the last couple of years.
And not even just that, one of the competitors that he was locked into a long-standing competition with for like over 10 years was financed by another billionaire in Ted Turner. So you can't, like, if they couldn't even take, like, Ted Turner couldn't even rival it, how, like, you have to try and produce something better. I find that AEW focuses more on, like, indie darlings, so, like, independent wrestling, because independent wrestling promotions still exist. The NWA still exists. They actually folded and then came back, and they're actually backed by, lead singer, he's from the, Smashing Pumpkins, Billy, I didn't even think I was going to be talking about it.
Honestly, my brain says talent or idol, and that is all I know.
So, they're backed by somebody from the Smashing Pumpkins.
Named Billy.
Billy Corgan.
Yeah, there we go. Billy Corgan.
Oh, I didn't know he's that one of those cute dogs.
Oh, God. What about guys?
More butter, please.
I used to have one of those when I did karate. Anyway.
So that's where the hand up the ass came from.
Yes, the puppets, the dummy slam. No, the dummy slam. That's what it was. The dummy slam is a personally original move I created in my time as a pro wrestler.
Holy fuck.
With a fistful of gear.
That whole wrestling explanation took 50 minutes.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, anyways.
Yeah, this is crazy, man.
This has been good.
This has been good. This is a long episode, folks. If you're not interested in a long episode, screw you. Stay and listen, because it's going to be great.
Now we're actually going to be getting into the crimes, so it's going to be nice. So, let's talk about our subjects.
This is basically a 2-episode episode.
Essentially. So, Medardo Jimmy Leon Jr.
Is that one person?
Yep.
Okay.
Was born on December 3rd.
That's unfortunate that they named him Jim twice.
Oh, God.
Nothing on Medardo?
Wow, dude. You're not allowed to say that anymore.
seems oddly racist.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
No.
I wasn't. All right.
For some reason, this is like second time I've gotten on him today.
Yeah. He's just not all there today.
Yeah.
So, December 3rd, 1959, he's born in Washington, D.C. There's not much noted on his childhood or younger years. It does surface that he was a mechanic in the 1970s and the early 1980s. He actually relocated from D.C. to Charlotte, North Carolina before settling in Baltimore, Maryland. During these years, he would train and then break into pro wrestling. So, like, he would train for a little bit and break into it. But in the beginning, he had a really hard time keeping with wrestling and training because he actually fell out of it 2 or 3 times because of the fact that he would have financial difficulties and he was a full-time mechanic.
Yeah, shit to do.
So he basically only wrestled or trained twice a week.
You know, it's funny, actually. That's a really interesting point because back in theater school, we were told that if you have a backup, you're eventually going to go to your backup.
Yeah.
So you either go all in.
I thought there was going to be a laxative in there.
No, this was an actual serious quote. But yeah, no, because so if you want to be an actor or a performer, you have to go all the way in, or you're just going to go to your backup because it's easier and safer.
Yeah. In the wrestling industry, like Mick Foley, when he was being trained, his trainer refused to train him unless he could prove that he was still staying in school because he needed a backup. And it's odd because like some trainers are like that because they know how hard the industry is, especially back in the 1970s and 80s.
Yeah.
But then you look at how successful Mick Foley is now today, and it's crazy because even after wrestling, he wrote best-selling novels and things like that. So
nice.
Oh, I actually know very little, so I appreciate you adding all this exposition.
Yeah, he wrote like a couple biographies and stuff like that about himself that were best-selling novels, and then he also wrote this story about a little boy, and it actually became like a really huge hit, and had spawned a couple other little extra books, and then eventually a comic book that went on for a little while as well.
Oh, really? What's it called?
I forget. It's
That's an interesting title.
Yeah, I know. You can look it up.
Yeah, okay.
So during the 1980s, he began appearing for promotions like on the eastern coast of the U.S. He became a staple in International Championship Wrestling and National Wrestling Federation. ICW. I went all different way with that. Was a promotion that ran from 1978 to 1984. And the promoter was Angelo Poffo, who's also known to be the father of the genius Lanny Poffo, and his much more famous son, Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh. I know that guy.
It was considered to be...
What's he like?
Oh, he's gone now.
You want to know it's a really funny story about him? When the Rockers had a fight in a hotel room, and they actually like beat the living shit out of each other, so Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty, the police came to arrest them because the hotel obviously called the cops. And Randy actually went up to the police, and this is in the 80s and like early 90s. And so he goes up and he goes, "It's all an angle, man. We're just shooting an angle." And he goes through this whole thing, and he signs a bunch of autographs for the officers, and the officers just bought this whole thing. And then as soon as he got Michaels and Jannetty back into the room, he was like, "What the fuck were you guys thinking?"
And then he starts beating the shit out of them.
Proper dad mode right there.
Yeah, so
you're gonna have to learn a lesson.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
horrible.
The promotion was considered an outlaw promotion. It wasn't a member of the NWA, so it ran directly against the NWA. So it actually ran shows in competition with a local NWA promotion as well. The NWF was a promotion that was ran originally from 1970s to 1974 and revived in 1986, then collapsed again in 1994.
These initialisms are going to eventually get confusing for people who aren't into wrestling.
I know.
You already messed up one.
During during the revival, Robert Raskins, who was the promoter's revival, he brought it back. He tried to build his own stars, kind of the way that the NWA and WWF does, and he also would steal off their talent.
Sensing a pattern.
Yeah, it's actually a really thing where if somebody's a name, you sign them on.
Is this kind of like that whole moral of basketball where it's like we can't allow people to switch teams anymore because it just muddles up the whole industry and stuff.
There's
like
no
that.
such thing as a non-compete, I take it.
There is non-compete clauses now. You have a 90-day... If you get released by WWE, you have a 90-day no-compete clause, so you can't go to another promotion for 90 days. But once that 90 days is up.
Okay.
And sometimes people, like, for instance, Kurt Angle negotiated to be able to compete against it by giving up his merchandising rights from WWE
That's
merchandising.
quite a penalty, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So Wendy Richter, who was actually like a huge woman star in WWF, lost in a controversial defeat to Fabulous Moolah and departed with WWF. Yes, the Fabulous Moolah. She was a legend. She's actually in the Hall of Fame. She's also a terrible person.
I just like hearing you say funny words.
Yeah.
Because I heard...
Are you 3?
Have you not met me?
I mean, less and less.
So Robert Rasmussen's also put more emphasis into hardcore wrestling, so like weapons and so on. And
did you picture a medieval flail as well? Like,
yeah, I just want to see some guy come in full body armor.
So,
no commentary, just starts swinging.
This actually had an effect on a very
that
new
wasn't the show,
hire.
that was just a guy.
He's got a morning star.
No, but there actually was in ECW. They used to do fans bring the weapons matches.
What?
And at one
Someone's
point,
gonna bring a real one.
well, at one point somebody had their artificial leg and took it off and gave it to Tommy Dreamer, and he just started walloping people with this fake leg. Like,
I want to see the video of that.
I honestly, I was kind of hoping for like a really like it's a twist joke, or it's like there's this guy brought his fake leg, he pulled it off, and he pulled out the Glock that he gave to the.
Could you imagine he's beating people with it, and then this gun falls in the middle? He's like, all right.
No, he picks it up and he starts pistol whipping people.
I mean, it has to be a flintlock and an eye patch, and he goes full pirate.
Oh man, at some point we're going to end up talking about New Jack, who's a wrestler, but he also is a bounty hunter, and he actually has 3 justifiable homicides. So we'll be talking about him at some point, and he has like this great life.
I'm gonna go with American on that one.
Oh god, yeah. He's from Georgia. But so
Peaches.
this wow.
Peaches.
So, this emphasis on hardcore wrestling, so weapons, so on, but not the weapons you're thinking of most of the time. I actually have been at a show where somebody, to end the feud, it was the final show of this thing. At some point, this guy had a Navy gimmick, and he just pulls out a fucking Glock at the end of the thing when he couldn't put the guy down for a pin and just shot him in the face. Actually, Adam was at that show, like our friend Adam.
Yeah.
Great.
The whole audience just like
he was there.
recoiling.
It was
like,
great.
Oh shit!
Everybody bail!
So, anyways,
I want to see
this-
the makeup for that show.
emphasis on hardcore wrestling had a real effect on Raskin's brand new color commentary team member Paul Heyman. And if you remember, Paul Heyman was in ECW, like Extreme Championship Wrestling.
I don't remember anything.
That's from earlier on when he got bought out of these companies.
Okay, cool.
So, in 1984, Ricky was competing under the name Jim Nunna.
What? Did he stammer?
So, that's actually...
His first opponent was Bernard the Batutut.
Yeah. So...
A show I'd want to watch.
So our friend Medardo here, he later goes by the name of Ricky Lawless. So Ricky was competing under the name of Jin Nunna and became the first champion of the American Wrestling Federation in Georgia. He eventually, after winning this... Nunna. So after winning the title, he began using his real name when he defended the title, which was Medardo. And as time went on, he just settled on the Ricky Lawless name. And it worked out better for him.
You're going to offend a lot of fans of this show.
Yes.
My God.
Ricky,
You can't say that word.
Oh.
It's just offensive.
He can.
Ouch!
Wow! I'm sorry.
Holy crap!
That was just wow.
Fucking shots fired!
You know, there's one thing I gotta ask. Do you know where I'm taking this joke, or are you just saying that because it sounds like it could be offensive?
I mean, A or B.
Holy crap! So,
wow.
so Ricky had located to Baltimore by this point, and he joined forces with another wrestler known as Dave Coleman, who was a student of Killer Kowalski, who trained people like Triple H, China, a few other really big names in the industry.
He trained the entirety of the country,
Yeah.
China?
All of China.
Wow. Koalas are amazing.
What?
His name is Kowalski.
I know.
Wow.
Is that like visual dyslexia? I don't know how that works.
Visual dyslexia.
Just like blurring similar things.
It's all in my head.
Audio dyslexia of anything.
Is that visual dyslexia? Where am I looking at this?
I don't know. It's all confusing.
Is it on the sticky note?
I don't know where you see this koala, but
I'm just on drugs and it's just dancing on the wall there.
So the two opened a wrestling school in a disused boxing gym, which would have sucked. Because boxing mats are so much harder than actual wrestling rings.
Oh, no, I was
Not the
thinking
best
about the
kind.
word disuse.
Yeah,
it seems
disused.
weird.
So the school produced great talents, including Steve the Brawler Lawler, Playboy Buddy Starr, and actually an ECW alumni of Axel Rotten.
Second one's Hugh Hefner, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Swinging his dick around.
So one of Ricky's students showed a lot of promise, and so Ricky decided to form a tag team with him. The student's name was Joey Maggs. They became the Heavy Metal Connection, and they began drawing attention and winning championships.
They call that a chain.
Yeah. So both men were hopeful that their popularity in the
Are you happy with
Mid-Atlantic and
yourself?
Mississippi region would get them noticed and hired by the NWA, but that never really happened. During the summer of 1988, Ricky teamed up with another one of his students, Axel Rotten, to win the Star Cavalcade Wrestling Tag Team Championships after they defeated the Smurfs.
Wow. Gargamel's plans got really, really dark.
Yeah. So they would quickly drop the belts to Rick Anderson
Hey, what?
and Snake Watson.
What?
The door done.
I think he's on drugs.
Yeah,
So Ricky defeated Moondog. That's literally the name that was given. Is Moondog. In September,
that is a character in my favorite anime.
Wow.
Moondoggy.
So you got beat by Ricky Lawless. In September of 1988, for the SCW Heavyweight Championship, so their big title. This part of his career, he's been credited with training some of the solid talent, proving himself to be a fantastic talent on his own in the final years of the territory era before basically WWE kind of like absorbed everything. He loved to party really hard and was a well-known womanizer and slept with a lot of married women.
Ah.
On November 30th, 1988, Ricky was shot dead.
You know, I was expecting AIDS.
Long onset.
So the Toronto Star published that he was murdered.
Have you ever seen the show Children's Hospital?
We're going with this? Yeah, that's fantastic.
where it's like, watch out! He's got a cancer gun! No, it's just a regular gun. I was trying to be ironic.
Wow.
You
that
should
kind of
really see it. It's fucking hilarious.
In doses, though, it's madness.
Is it?
It's madness.
No, you just do it all at once. It's perfection.
Wow.
It's a parody of every medical drama ever invented.
That's so great.
Yeah.
This is a cancer gun.
And it was created by
I mean, that is just
Rob
an X-ray machine.
Rob Corddry.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll talk about it more later.
That'd be worth a while.
Yeah.
So, the Toronto Star published that he was murdered by his former tag team partner, Vladimir Koloff. Highly doubt that it's true, but rumors still circulate that this is actually the truth. But
and he drank his blood.
Yeah, totally. And Raymond Michael Schwartz, who was 22 at the time, was actually found to be the shooter in the public's eye. And after an expose by Hustler, it focused on the fact that Ricky had slept with Schwartz's wife, and that Raymond became irate and killed Ricky. Regardless, Schwartz was charged with first-degree murder.
Okay, so there was an actual criminal.
My heart skipped a beat when I heard Ray.
Yeah. So, Ricky's reign as SCW heavyweight champion, because he was still the champion at the time when he was killed, was declared vacant, obviously, and was later won by Axel Rotten, his student, as basically a tribute to him. Mm-hmm. Dr. Tom Parks, a former referee and well-known dirt sheet writer, so dirt sheets are people who give away secrets of wrestling a little bit and tell you kind of the rumors backstage. He did a 2003 interview and said that Ricky was a party animal, but also a very talented grappler. I really think he would have went far if he had lived longer. Jimmy was funny, and he could have a 4-star match versus a broom.
What?
That's awesome.
That's actually something that said a lot, that you could pull a lot of matches out of a broom. Okay. Shawn Michaels is said to be one of those kind of people too, that he could literally wrestle like a mop bucket and have no problem. Like,
I just see a janitor like having fun and singing.
I've wrestled a pillow before. I'm just saying. Like,
we've all wrestled
that's
the pillow.
Someone's fetish.
No kink shame.
Yeah.
There's no shame.
So, he had a lot of great talent. It's just too bad that more people didn't get to see it. Of course, when you party as hard as he did and some of the unwise things he did, you can't expect to have a long lifespan. Even though we didn't see eye to eye on everything, Jimmy was probably my best friend in the wrestling industry. So Ricky's partner, Joey Maggs, would continue to appear in wrestling at USWA and signed with WCW for a little while. He also made sporadic appearances with WWF and a few smaller promotions before retiring of a shoulder injury. He became a cargo pilot before passing away in 2008 at the age of 37. His cause of death is unknown. Axel Rotten
has to do with his shoulder.
Yeah. Axel Rotten, his student and the guy that won the title or whatever and became a little bit of a legend on his own.
Is he related to Bonnie Rotten?
No. But Axel Rotten passed away on February 4th, 2016 at the age of 44.
Do you need me to explain that one?
I'm sure you'll tell me later. I'm sure.
Yeah,
okay.
And he died of a heroin overdose.
Oh.
So, talking about another one that's not very well-known wrestler, but is a really interesting story. Iron Mike Steele was born in Tampa, Florida on July 18th, 1955.
I'm impressed that his parents named him 2 medals.
His real name was John Meek.
He went the other way.
Wow, that could not be the weakest name I've ever heard in my life.
Well, he was trained by Boris Malenko, who is...
oh, the guy who made those Japanese machines, right?
I was going to say a Russian dude.
Wow. He's the father of Dean Malenko, who was like really big in WWE.
I like those things. They're cool.
Yeah.
I'm out of this one too.
Yeah, you put the weird little ball and it hits all the sticks
Plinko?
and it can... No. That's not it. Jesus. Can you believe this guy doesn't get it?
Yeah. And then all I could think to myself when you said that was Crank.
Like the old monkey from Donkey Kong?
Wow. So, I'm going to get back to John here. So he came up like after his training and had a lot of really memorable matches and basically became this like kind of floating talent between all the big promotions in the 80s and 90s, including having matches with like Mark Marrow and Dean Malenko, who his father trained him. In 1984, Meek's wrestling career came to a close when he was struck while driving a motorcycle in Gibsonton, Florida, which is a suburb south of Tampa. Sadly, 13 years later, he'd be involved in another incident that involved his motorcycle. Early morning hours of August 29th, 2007.
I don't want to spoil anything, but I think the murderer is the motorcycle.
Yeah, totally. So, at a Riverview, Florida bar, Harry Brian Taylor, age 38, became really annoyed with Meek. And Meek's daughter, Layla, stated that pro fighters are often hassled by drunk idiots. So because he was a pro wrestler, sure enough, somebody got really up there.
So I got to stop you.
Again?
Harry Brian Taylor.
Yep.
Yeah.
That rolls off the tongue so perfectly, and yet it sounds like it should be a comedy name.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it is. There's nothing there, but at the same time, it sounds like something's there.
Yeah.
Harry Brian Taylor.
It flows so good.
Like, yeah, like, you think, like, Harry Brain, Harry Brand, like,
there's something.
There's something there. Like Harry Brian is his title, and his name is Taylor.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe he just hangs out with a guy named Harry Brian. And that's his he's Harry Brian Taylor, because he's always hanging out with Harry Brian.
Duo?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. That's a really nice little script thing that we can... You got this conjured in your mind now, like... And he's hanging out at a bar. Like...
Harry Brian Taylor. He is, he's the Phantom Barber's, like, white whale, his Everest.
That Harry Brian.
Harry Brian and his stupid friend Taylor.
Yeah. We're sorry, Taylor.
Circus runaways.
Yeah.
So like she said, drunk idiots can want to fight any, like, pro wrestler, and it's true. They will fucking pick fights with anybody. It happens all the time. Because they see somebody in the ring and then go, I could kick your ass. And then, of course, the wrestlers have to be tough and fight back, because if you just walk away from the fight, you kind of look like you're a pussy, and then they get kind of all pissed off, and then it takes away the legitimacy of how much of an athlete you actually are. So,
I assume time frame wise,
yeah, this
that
is back
changed.
in the old days. But,
yeah.
So this is 2007. So of course, John was getting hassled by Taylor here, and
Could we be more white?
but he was getting hassled by him, and was making comments against him,
And
saying
Harry
that,
Brian was standing there watching.
I'm like Ingelheimer Smith. What's happening next?
So, he was basically standing there making comments to John, saying, like, you were not a real biker, all this kind of stuff, and that he could take the former wrestler in a fight. Around 3 a.m., both men left the bar. John left on his Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and Taylor was driving a work van, which I think is fantastic, that you're being like, you're not a real biker, and then you hop in your work van. So shortly after...
well, that's his serial killer MO. He has all their motorcycles in the work van.
I will say this, if you have a big white van, like a big white, like, van, like work van that you use for work and stuff like that, and you just drive it around casually, I assume you're a serial killer. I assume there are bodies in that van.
Yeah, like, there is nothing good associated with a white unmarked van.
Yeah, like, there's got to be something really bad happening. So, shortly after this, because they left at 3 a.m., shortly after, John was found lying on the roadside, his damaged motorcycle beside him. Taylor had intentionally ran him over with the work van and then fled the scene. Meek died 2 hours later.
That sounds like a very unfair fight.
Yeah. Van versus man? Like,
van versus motorcycle.
Yeah.
If I've learned anything from Dead Rising, there should have been some fucking chainsaws on that motorcycle.
Yeah. Drive by. So shockingly, this wasn't the first time Taylor had been to prison for killing someone.
You just get out?
From 1988 to 2000, he served a prison sentence for a separate second-degree murder after he stabbed a 60-year-old man in Ocala, Florida. Now, he's 38 when he kills him in 2007. 1988 is when he killed the other guy.
Oh my god, now I'm actually creating an image of what he looks like in my head. Unfortunately, it's Russell Crowe in that crazy road rage movie he just recently did.
Wow.
You know what movie I'm talking about, right?
No, I don't watch TV.
No, it wasn't on TV. This was in theaters very, very recently.
I haven't seen movies in theaters in almost 4 years.
Oh, okay. I forget what it is, but like he's gotten like really big.
Oh, okay.
And like obviously he's always hairy because he's Russell Crowe.
Yeah, he's Russell Crowe.
But like some woman honks at him because he's stopped at a light, and then he goes insane and like tries to destroy her life for saying that she had a bad day and she was apologizing for honking her horn.
Well, tying into that, Taylor here killed the 60-year-old man. He stabbed him when he was confronted for stealing the victim's car.
Did he?
Yeah, he stole the car.
Okay.
The old man was like, "Hey, don't steal my car." And he turned around and was like, "Kuh!" Like,
and he got 12 years for that?
No, he served from 1980. Yeah, 12 years, I guess. But it was a 40-year sentence, and he was paroled. Like, he was released after only 12.
For car theft and, I guess, aggravated... Well, at best, aggravated assault if he has a good lawyer.
Yeah. So they obviously found him guilty of second-degree murder in the death of John Meek. But to me, that's really weird because you intentionally ran somebody over with your fucking car. You had all the intent in the world.
What's second degree again?
Second degree is where you kill somebody but you didn't like completely premeditate it.
It wasn't well thought out.
Yeah. So he received life without parole. Now for our final case, which is actually a very famous case. June 18th, 1946, in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, Frank Donald Goodish was born. Goodish.
Was he okay? He was goodish.
So Frank had a good uprising. Upbringing. Sorry, uprising.
Did I leave?
He had a good uprising.
I'm gonna go now.
He took down the King of America.
There was a revolt, you know. So he had a good upbringing. And nothing really notable about his childhood comes up. While attending Warren High School in Michigan, Frank would become an all-star on both the basketball and football team. So you would say he's a little better than Goodish. He went on to attend West Texas.
Now you're both doing it.
Sorry, I can't get over uprising.
Well, yeah, uprising on the team.
He tried to take down Vince McMahon.
So he went on to attend West Texas State, which is now known as West Texas A&M University. He was playing football on their team, and then eventually he signed on with the Washington Redskins for the NFL. Well, in Texas, Goodish picked up a job as a sports writer, and this brought him into contract with wrestling royalty Fritz von Erich.
How was his writing?
I have no idea.
It was Goodish.
It was Goodish. So the Von Erichs will have their own episode because their story is really tragic. Like, almost all of them die. So there's only one of them left.
How good of it was it?
Well, there's one left.
It was Goodish. So Fritz, whose real name is Jack Barton Atkinson Sr.
How do they all have so many names?
I have no idea. He trained Frank to be a wrestler, and Frank had his first match in Dallas for WCCW, which is World Class Championship Wrestling, which is owned by Fritz.
How'd it go?
Goodish.
By the end of this episode, people are going to now hate me.
Yeah. Wow. So his career kind of caught fire from there. He used the monikers of Bruiser Brody and King Kong Brody. The latter was used as a sign of respect for Dick the Bruiser, because Bruiser Brody and Dick the Bruiser.
Much respect.
Goodish.
That one doesn't even work.
I know.
I was expecting a cervix punch joke.
So he wrestled for. So just to show how like widespread his career was, he wrestled for Central State Wrestling, Worldwide Wrestling Federation, and World Wrestling Federation instead of worldwide. Southwest Championship Wrestling, Windy City Wrestling, Deep South Wrestling, Championship Wrestling from Florida, World Class Championship Wrestling, AWA, the American Wrestling Association, and World Wrestling Council. And World Wrestling Council is the one that we are really going to have to focus on at the end.
Oof.
So, because he was known as Bruiser Brody, I'll just refer to him as Brody from here on out. Brody's feuds were brutal, and he utilized a really rough, stiff style, and it was a really hardcore style. So, like, broke rules, wasn't afraid to use a weapon, and
blew up a shark.
Yeah, totally.
At what point do you get charged with like assault?
It depends. Like, everything's consensual in the ring, and there's just certain things that...
Yeah, that can't be true. If Navy guy actually busted out a Glock and shot somebody, I don't think
that'd be very different. Yes.
There's
got to be a line.
There's a fight. There's something to do with a fight license that I learned. They actually...
There's a rule, though.
We used to have...
Hilariously, I learned that from the Boondocks. Because he fought the blind dude and accidentally killed him.
Right.
But it's kind of like how there used to be a boxing license that you had to have to be a professional boxer. And I think there's still some states that do it. I know that, like, in like Mexico, you have to have a certain license to do it, but there are, like, they kind of let it slide a little bit here and there. I know that in Canada, a lot of provinces have it where they don't have a license anymore, but they used to have a license. Like Ontario used to have one, but then they got rid of it.
For those who are not privy to Canada's info, provinces are the equivalent to your states. They also have 3 territories.
Yep.
And you want none of it.
Thank you, NPR.
Wow. So, because of this, he developed well-known feuds with other big men that were a little stiffer, like Kamala, the Ugandan giant, whose real name is James Arthur Harris. He had a decent, successful career, including wrestling in...
Was he actually Ugandan? Because now...
No, he was just a black man that had, like, face paint and, like, paint all over him, and they claimed that he was a Ugandan giant, and he would, like, walk around, like, hitting his chest like a gorilla and just making weird sounds.
That sounds racist.
Yeah. Well,
is that the first thing that sounded racist to you?
No, it's that other thing you said.
About the little people.
Oh, that's what I was trying to remember what I said.
So,
definitely racist.
He had a decent career, mostly from like WWF. He was actually used like sporadically by them. He did fall ill with diabetes later on in his life, and he lost both feet before eventually passing on August 9th, 2020 at the age of 70. He also had a feud with Abdullah the Butcher, whose real name is Lawrence Robert Shreve.
That sounds racist.
He's a Canadian hardcore wrestler.
There you go.
Who was a big draw for his really brutal style, and he excessively used blading, which is the process of you would use a type of blade and cut yourself or have a referee cut you to make blood happen.
I've actually been told about that one.
It's like ritual.
I've seen, because like I've seen some older wrestlers on like. I think it was one of the WrestleManias or something. I was watching it with some of the people who do like that shit, and I remember seeing this guy. I was like, "Why is his forehead all scratched up?" And they said it was because of all the
Ric Flair has like paper thin skin from up here and he can literally just go like this and rip himself open because of the fact that he bladed so much. But Abdullah here actually has these huge divots in his bald head. And just from the amount of blading and how deep he would cut. And these divots are so deep that Mick Foley once made a claim that Abdullah could put poker chips in them.
I mean, up in the ante.
Yeah.
There's no way you can put, like, vertically?
Yeah, just...
It's usually yours.
He's so funny!
Then stop doing it.
What I'm laughing.
Yeah.
It's really funny. You know.
Them?
See those? Those divots right on the top of his head?
Shit!
Something to post.
Yeah.
He also looks a little bit like John Witherspoon.
Yeah, a little bit, eh?
Yeah. Like, he's got that weird, like, angled lower jaw.
Yeah. He also has hepatitis C. There's actually a whole thing with...
And he's bleeding himself everywhere?
He got hepatitis C from doing this, and then later on in his career, actually, he's retired now, but one of the reasons he went into retirement is actually because an Ottawa wrestler known as Cannibal developed hepatitis C while in a match with him.
Jesus.
Because there was a bleeding incident and their bloods mixed, and he got hepatitis C. He's now recovered from it.
Oh, that's good.
But he sued Abdullah and won like $1 million.
Oh, he should have.
He looks so shocked in this picture.
I know. Almost like he wasn't expecting a photo to be taken.
Oh, you weren't kidding.
No.
Is it typical to completely blade the exact same spot? Like, why would you
try to keep it so the scarring stays minimal, but you also try to spread it out just enough so that it's not always the same spot. But that's the problem, is that Ric Flair's been wrestling for fucking 50 years.
So his entire scalp's like that, whereas he just fucked up.
Yeah.
It's usually the forehead. He got the scalp.
Yeah. So, the other one that he faced off against was Crusher Jerry Blackwell, who competed in the 1979 World's Strongest Man Challenge, but withdrew due to an injury. He died of injuries sustained in a car crash in 1995 at the age of 45. So these guys don't live long. Abdullah is actually still alive. He's in his 70s. Brody also traveled to Japan as part of a tag team with Stan Hansen, who's a well-known wrestler who had a really stiff style.
Why didn't he go by Stanson?
I have no idea. But
it's so perfect!
The reason behind this stiff style has always been like attributed because Stan is actually very blind.
Oh,
so he just fucking stalking people because he doesn't know how far away they are.
Oh.
Yeah. Brody developed a reputation for refusing to job, which is lose, to other wrestlers. He was extremely protective of his in-ring persona and would go as far as to outright attack opponents in the ring to try and draw it into a shoot fight. So if he was told to lose, and it was said that he was going to lose, he was going to the ring.
He's just a half-blind bully, really.
So Brody wasn't Stan Hansen.
A shoot fight?
Shoot fight, so legitimate. He would make it legitimate. So this gave him a hostile image and left a really sour taste with many companies, who would kind of like slowly draw a line with him because he was a draw and he was a popular draw, but he also has this bad attitude. So it was kind of this, we can make money off him, but then how much money?
Like, what's the lie?
Yeah, where eventually do we go? He's too hostile for the money he brings in.
Yeah.
In 1976, he entered the WWF, so the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. He challenged for the championship against Bruno Sammartino, the guy who left with the belt at one point, but didn't win the title. After this, he teamed with Big John Studd, who was another really big man.
I thought he was a horse.
Could have been.
He was very lucky man.
He was a really good, draw, and he actually had a really good career. But he died in 1995 of a combination of complications from liver cancer and Hodgkin disease.
Oh shit!
He was 47 when he passed away. There was an incident in WWF where Invader number 1, known as Jose Gonzalez, that's his real name.
Seriously?
Yeah. Faced off against him, and he refused to do any selling. So throughout the match, if he got hit, he wouldn't sell it. He'd just be like, I didn't get hit.
He's just tanking everything?
Yeah. And basically sandbagging, not allowing him to do any moves, things like that. He had a brief stint with NGPW, so New Japan Pro Wrestling, in 1985, facing off in a small rivalry with the owner, Antonio Inoki. Most of the matches would end in no contest or disqualifications. This caused a great deal of grief for Brody because he doesn't like to lose or he doesn't like to not get what he wants. So he was eventually fired because he was just causing problems. January 21st, 1987, he had a match against Lex Luger inside of a steel cage. They were in Florida, and the match became infamous for what happened inside of the steel cage.
Lex had a giant robot suit.
Totally. In the middle of the match, Brody stopped working, so stopped wrestling, and just stood there. Would just basically stand around, let Lex push him into a corner or whatever, but wouldn't do anything. Both Lex and referee Bill Alfonso, who would later become notorious for some of the stuff that he did in ECW, he was like a really good manager, they tried speaking to Brody, but he just wouldn't respond. So basically they'd be like, what's going on? What's happening? He just
went mute.
Stare at you. So Lex and Alfonso decided to forego the finished plan, like what they originally had for the match, and ended it with a disqualification when Lex pushed Brody into a corner and then just did like a continuous punch thing past the 10 count.
Holy shit.
Which is not normal for a steel cage match. Normally steel cage matches end with you climbing over the cage.
Yeah, you get out.
Yeah, so Lex Luger actually later asked Brody if he had done something to upset him, and Brody responded with no.
Just a psycho.
So when they asked him what the reasons why he stopped working in the match were, he said the match just wasn't working.
No, what wasn't working was you.
Yeah. So he never clarified his reasoning further, and left it in a really confusing state. In Larry Matisik's book, Wrestling at the Chase, he states that Brody told him before that I'm not putting up with any of his bullshit, so Lex's bullshit, and that Brody was upset that Lex would not sell for him. So he thought he was just not going to do anything, so he just stopped doing anything. However, watching the match, it's really clear that Luger did sell for Brody. So, like, he was working with him.
Did this guy just throw a hissy fit, basically?
I guess so.
Yeah, he sounds very childish.
Later on, Bill Alfonso said that there was a miscommunication issue over who would lead the match, and that there was no ill will between the two, that they still got pretty, like, all got along fine. Another scenario was that Brody was upset over the paychecks the promoter was paying him, so because he felt that he wasn't being paid enough, he just said, I'm not going to work. So that would kind of explain why midway through a match, he just, you get your money's worth. Like,
yeah.
How do people get hired after shit like that?
Yeah.
It's insane.
I don't know. Fucking Christian Bale still getting roles despite the fact that he had that huge outburst on the lighting guy.
Yeah. So, it is stated that in 1987, he did return to the AWA and fought Greg Gagne and Jerry Blackwell. Despite his reputation for being disagreeable with promoters, he actually aided a lot of them to try and boost ticket sales and guarantee crowds coming in.
Just in the ring, he's a prick.
Yeah, he was also the booker for WCCW in Texas and produced their TV program. So he did try to help promotions as well, but he was seen as volatile a lot.
Sounds like an egomaniac.
Yeah. In 1987, he began wrestling pretty well exclusively for World Championship Council, which is WCC, which is run by Carlos Colon, who was a really good wrestler on his own and had a great deal of success. He even won the NWA World Heavyweight Championship from Ric Flair at one point.
Plus, he smells really nice.
Yeah.
He's French.
Well, it's funny because, no, he's...
I know.
He's Puerto Rican, and the way his name is spelt
is
colon.
Okay.
So
he smelled really nice.
French people are famous for smelling really nice.
So the goal of him winning the World Heavyweight Championship was to eventually merge the WCC's Universal Heavyweight Championship with the NWA Heavyweight Championship and make an NWA Universal Heavyweight Champion. But Ric Flair, who was the champion at the time, vetoed it, lost, and then eventually reclaimed the title. So basically, Ric Flair was like, "No, you're not going to get that."
Yeah, that's mine.
So both of Carlos's sons would eventually end up in WWE as Carlito and Primo, as well as his nephew, who would be known as Epico.
A pattern.
Honestly, I was kind of hoping for Primo, Ragu, and Bravo.
They're Puerto Rican. Come on now.
Yeah, right. Like spaghetti sauce.
I mean, yeah.
So
there's a twisted logic to that.
So Brody would feud with the Universal Champion, Carlos Colon, during the first part of his time with the company, and then he also would continue his feud with Abdullah the Butcher, the guy with the divots.
Mm-hmm.
He spent a little bit of time in AGPW, so All Japan Pro Wrestling, winning his final NWA International Championship. There was actually this attempt that he made on April 15th of 1988 to become the Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion, so winning all three of All Japan Pro Wrestling's titles to basically be their main champion. But he failed when he faced off against the United National and PWF champion Genichiro Tenryu.
Shinichiro? Tenryu?
Sure.
Genichiro. So,
Gen.
yeah, Gen.
No, that'd be, no, I guess that would be Gen. No, that'd be Gen.
I guess so. So 4 days later, though, he lost his title. So when he faced off against this guy, it ended up becoming a draw at a double countout. So 4 days later, he lost the title, his international championship title, to Jumbo Tsuruata.
You want me to read these for you?
No, that's literally what it says. So
I mean,
he actually went on to become the first ever Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion when he won all three titles. He died at the age of 49 from complications of a liver transplant on May 13th, 2000.
Ooh,
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. So he actually was for most of his career, he did play a heel because he was really good for chasing titles, and if he did hold a title, for being that bad piece that you wanted to see the guy win against kind of thing. However, in some areas like WCCW, he was a babyface because that's where he started off, especially when he faced off against Abdullah the Butcher, mostly because Abdullah was Canadian, so he's not from here. Abdullah would be a face when wrestling in Montreal, and Brody would be the heel. So they kind of reversed roles when they were in each other's territories.
That regional?
Yeah. So on July 16th, 1988, Brody was in the locker room in Puerto Rico after a scheduled match with Dan Spivey. They were close to San Juan. And Jose Gonzalez, the guy that he refused to sell for a few years ago, back in the 1970s, was he's a fellow wrestler and the part-time booker. So bookers basically make the matches and book how everything's supposed to be, and
so they plan it out and everything.
Yeah. Allegedly asked him to step into the shower area to discuss business.
Is that typical?
So there was an argument.
Yeah, it is.
There was an argument between the two wrestlers, and there was a fight that ensued. Due to the design of the dressing room, there was no witnesses to the altercation. However, two screams were heard, loud enough for the entire locker room to hear, and Tony Atlas, who was was in the Olympics as a heavy lifter, then became a pro wrestler, ran to the showers and saw Brody bent over holding his stomach. Atlas then looked at Gonzalez and saw him holding a fairly large hunting knife.
Oh, fuck.
And due to the heavy traffic outdoors and large crowd in the stadium, it took paramedics close to an hour to reach Brody.
What?
When the paramedics arrived, Atlas helped carry Brody's body downstairs to the waiting ambulance. Due to the size, paramedics were unable to lift him, so they had to use Atlas, who was an Olympic lifter. He later died of his stab wounds, and Gonzalez claimed self-defense and testified in his own defense. He was acquitted of the murder in 1989. The prosecution witnesses living outside of Puerto Rico did not show up, claiming that they did not receive summons until the trial had ended. However, many view it as a jealousy spat, and Gonzalez was considered a good worker, but just not of Brody's caliber. The knife was said to be a large hunting knife, and to this day has not been found. Gonzalez openly admits now that he murdered him, just in cold blood.
Was it double jeopardy?
Yeah. And so, but now that the trials are over, it's also thought that Carlos, who owns WCC, and a number of others bribed and bullied the witnesses and other wrestlers to not come forward or not come to the trial and testify.
Sounds about right.
There's a great deal of statements about them fearing for their lives if they came to Puerto Rico during this time. So
it's all because he had a name that everyone made fun of.
Yeah, totally. So fellow wrestlers Dutch Mantel and Tony Atlas said that in the 1970s, Brody and Gonzalez had wrestled each other, and Brody had wrestled very roughly and beat up Gonzalez and refused to sell. S.D. Jones claims that after one of these matches, Gonzalez said to him, "One of these days I'm going to kill that man."
So did he?
I don't know. Do you trust his word?
Hard to say.
So Gonzalez capitalized on the notoriety for killing Bruiser Brody, and he's still alive and well. He's a former champion, retired, and has a lot of notoriety for being the man who killed Bruiser Brody and managed to walk away. In April 2019, Brody's death was featured on Vice's Dark Side of the Ring, Season 1, Episode 3. It includes interviews with Dutch Mantell, Tony Atlas, and Abdullah the Butcher. And basically in 2019, that's also when they inducted Bruiser Brody into the WWE Hall of Fame. He's already in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2014. So,
had he not been, I don't want to speak ill will to the dead, but had he not been killed, it sounds like he was a pretty big dick.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
I feel like he might have not been deserving to be put into a Hall of Fame.
It's
maybe infamous in fame.
Well, there's a lot of people that are like that. For instance, Shawn Michaels was known to be a huge dick, and he openly admits it. There's a lot of things that he did that were very unfair. And even Sunny, one of the first ever considered divas of WWE, she was dating Chris Candido while also sleeping with Shawn Michaels. And there's actually a point where Shawn had somebody on lookout outside of a janitor's closet while they were fucking in there. And then when Chris came by, they kind of stumbled out and pretended like they were just kind of and he just kind of shook his head and walked away without ever saying anything. But there's a lot of these stories that people are real dicks.
Keeping it classy.
Sorry, I was looking on my phone. When you said Shawn Michaels, I was like, isn't that a drag queen?
Yeah.
And it's Chad Michaels I got confused with.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, there's a lot of people in, wrestling that were huge dicks. Bruno Sammartino's in the actual Hall of Fame as well for WWE. It took a long time for them to reach out and get him. But he finally came forward. But then in his speech, he also said that he doesn't recommend anybody ever get into the wrestling industry. Bret Hart's a really bitter one as well. I actually despise that man. But he openly states a lot about how much wrestling's given to him, but he also states about how much wrestling took away from him, and always talks about how his dad would prefer people meet the Olympic wrestlers rather than pro wrestlers.
Just one big long daddy issues. Every job gives and takes. Everything does.
I think I've actually heard you talk about that scenario with Bret Hart.
Yeah. I've actually met the man a few times, and he's...
I don't know this one. Not a charmer, I take it.
No. But
he's got heart.
Yeah.
Someone else's.
Well, what's funny is that when he was being inducted into the Hall of Fame the second time for being a Hart Hart Foundation member with Jim Anvil Neidhart after Anvil had died.
And Kevin Hart.
Kevin Hart, totally. But after he was being inducted into that, a fan actually attacked him in the ring. Jumped the gate and jumped into the ring and tried to take him down. Damn. And Bret Hart kicked the shit out of him. So it's just fantastic to see this 60-year-old man get attacked from behind and still kick the shit out of this 25-year-old dude.
These are people trained to fight all the time, even if it's for show.
Yeah.
It's harder to hold back than it is to go all out.
Yeah,
professionals don't do either, but it's a whole other conversation.
Also, if you think about Stu Hart had his dungeon where...
Excuse me?
Yeah, that's where he trained people, was in the Stu Hart dungeon.
Is that where the Morning Stars came from for the weapons?
Yeah, totally. It's funny because he would take people down there and he would stretch them out. That's what he was calling it. And so essentially he would take giant guys and just put them in holds to the point that he was basically just crippling them with these holds. But he never did any permanent damage. He just stretched the hell out of them until the point that they were just feeling that they were ready to bones were ready to break and stuff. But he would never go beyond that. He just had this incredible control for it. But
I was like, this is a really fucked up thing to do, though.
Yeah, but it was to try and teach them legitimate selling. That you do something for this, but it was a really intense way of doing it, that's for sure. And this goes back to the whole thing that he preferred Olympic-style wrestling and, like, real fights rather than that. But yet he ran one of the biggest promotions in Canada. So...
How are we for time?
We're at almost 2 hours.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Well, honestly, that sounds like it was a fucking long-ass episode. We got some good shots in. We talked about an entire industry before we got to our subject.
Yeah.
And somehow our jar is just overflowing with wrestling knowledge that I feel like we could probably scoop some of that out.
Oh, man.
Speaking of overflowing, I'll be back.
Yeah,
okay.
In the overflow. All right, folks, I think we're going to call that the end of our episode. So, as I mentioned before, don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and review Perry Chick and... I said Perry Chick instead of Cherry Pick. And, bend over and do some gay porn. And
wow.
Not to mention, you can reach us at Chaos. You can reach us on Instagram and Twitter at BAChaosJar, or you can reach me at I'm Glad You Asked _ Give me some questions, people. And you can find us on Facebook at Pandora's Jar Podcast. And we got a YouTube channel now, Chaos Jar. And lastly, if you want to be a patron and get access to those early episodes of the Overflow, feel free to go to patreon.com/chaosjar and, throw us a couple bucks and, support our small time business.
Our endeavor.
Yeah, or, just go there and watch some Overflow episodes that are...
We're going to show up at your house and give you a puppet slam.
I will come and do the dummy... No, it's the dummy slam.
Ah, there we go.
Because you shove the hand up the ass, and when you hit their head, they're no longer smart.
Wow.
All right, folks, that's our episode. Good night.